my role is I'm basically like a marketing like technician. So I know, I've gotten really familiar with platforms and programs, and even some really detailed stuff like media buying and copywriting. And so what the role that I kind of take is almost when I work with brands and do different things is kind of like almost like an outsourced CMO, or almost like coming in to say, hey, here's your overall strategy, but then here's also the workflows that it's going to take to kind of get it done, right? And so I'll give you kind of like the pitch version of, like the dramatized version of my background. But basically where I started out marketing is it's funny you said, Austin, a lot of people say, oh, we focus on the tech or focus on the app and don't think about the marketing. My career path actually kind of follows that exact trajectory. So I started my first business when I was in high school and started selling stuff. I did the whole like selling a t-shirt brand out of the trunk of my car kind of thing, like doing all that kind of stuff, and made kind of my first legit company, with an LLC and a bank account and everything within about a month of graduating, and had this product that I was selling in a mall kiosk in different malls. And so I would talk to customers. I'd see a lot of different people, and it was kind of right before the iPhone came out. And so we had this line of electronics we were selling, and I talked to different people and kind of convinced them that, hey, this Bluetooth thing or this thing is going to be really cool for you. And so I really thought I was like a product guy and kind of a founder guy and a startup guy. Well, kind of fast forward, 5 years of kind of doing that, and, iteration kind of, this kind of turned into a different brand and turned into this other company. And we ended up starting a brand that we got some really good traction with and got some good awareness on. And then I attracted kind of the interest of this group that had a ton of connections in Hollywood, had a ton of financial connections. And we put together this company. We raised about $2.5 million to go build this consumer electronics company. So, and being a product guy, I was like, all right, I'm going to China. I'm doing this. I'm figuring out industrial design. I'm doing all that kind of stuff. And we built this super cool product. We actually, I remember at one point I was in Tahoe in this, like $4 million house of this guy that was like, used to be partners with Dr. Bose that like engineered all the sound. And this guy had, he like toured with the Grateful Dead. So I was just so in the weeds on like audio engineering and industrial design and all this kind of stuff. I went to China probably 20 times manufacturing these products. And we ended up getting our product in a handful of places. Like we were in Apple, we were in Target, we were in Costco, and we had kind of test orders with all these places. And the pivotal moment for me was, and by about this time, I'd been kind of doing business and doing my own things for about 8 years or so. So it took a while to kind of get to this realization. I remember we're sitting in a meeting with the distributors for Target, and they said, hey, here's your sell-through data in the first 30 stores. Things are looking really good. We'd even considered rolling out a full nationwide rollout if you could tell us your plan for driving people into a Target store, and it was literally like, it had never dawned on me that I'm like, what do you mean? Like drive customers into your store, and I kind of made an idiot out of myself, but kind of through that conversation, I realized that even Target, you kind of think when you make a product and you get it in Target, like, oh, you've made it. But if you don't have a plan to drive customers in, like you are not going to succeed. So long story short, we didn't get the big Target deal. The company kind of ended up unfolding. But that was kind of a pivotal moment for me where I'm like, man, the marketing really is as important or more important in some cases than the actual product. And so I basically vowed to myself, I'm like, I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to build a product, wait 3 or 4 years and be like, wait, I have no idea how to get a customer for this. And so I started marketing. And then through that company, one thing that we had learned was a lot about digital marketing. We had a really successful Kickstarter campaign. And so from that was about 6 or 7 years ago. And since that point, I've really leaned on those skills that I picked up in marketing my own brands. And I started doing that for more people. And then, that turned into, I think I've worked with 200 different brands or so total in either a coaching capacity or an agency kind of capacity, and helped them build a strategy to market their product.
So Shane, you're saying marketing can be important then?
Yeah, I would say marketing is not kind of important. Marketing is like make or break for your company, right? Because ultimately, if you don't have sales, you don't have a company, and if you don't have marketing, you're probably not going to have sales or sales at any kind of scale. So
if you don't have marketing, you're going to be sitting in a boardroom with some high level CEOs of Target and just not know what to say, right? That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, totally. And how frustrating is it? Like, I think we've all done stuff where you do something really cool and you're like, man, I'm really helping these 2 people out. If I could have 50 other people know what I'm doing, that would be really cool. And we've all felt that. as founders. And then, that's what marketing does, is marketing helps you have a lot more conversations with a lot more people,
Sure. Tell me about your experience. You're in Utah. Tell me about your experience of some of the tech that you've worked with and how that might differ from maybe product marketing, or kind of what's your experience there?
It's funny, like I started in B2C, or what they would say is kind of B2C, right? Or like consumer goods. What was interesting is I started having people that would come to me and saying, hey, I like this video you did for that. I think this is cool. Could you do that for my brand? We're an attorney trying to get more leads, or we're a software provider or something, something like that, right? And what I would say of kind of marketing tech versus marketing a business versus marketing a service versus marketing a consumer good is it's all really the same thing. And that's been my experience, whether you're marketing tech or, whatever your product is and whoever your customer is. I think a lot of people get hung up on, oh, we're a B2B, we're trying to sell to a business, or, oh, we're a B2C. I've never once had a business reach out to me and say, hey, we want to work with you, right? I have a person at the business that says, hey, this really piqued my interest. Can you help us? So I think that's kind of the first thing I would say, whether it's I think there's kind of two points to that question. One, marketing is universal, right? And the tactics might change. Like if you're marketing tech versus you're marketing a Shopify product, a store on a Shopify store or a consumer good, the way you're going to get to that person is totally different. But you have to know who you're talking to. You have to understand what your product is actually helping them do or fulfilling for them. And then the second piece is all marketing. There is no such thing as B2B or B2C or whatever. It's all person to person. Everything you're doing, you're trying to get a person to be excited about what you have.
Whether that person is a business owner or just a consumer, you're still trying to connect to a person.
Yeah. And that person might be maybe in a great case, it's a Fortune 500 CEO, but he's still a person, right? He's still sitting there at night thinking, man, there's something keeping him awake that gets him to click on your ad or whatever it is, right? So let's shift gears. Let's go specifically to an app, right? And let's maybe say for this conversation, let's say that we're talking about marketing a specific service that's known over an iPhone or something like that, right? Or through an iPhone app. I think when you have to think of when you think of strategy, I think you have to think of, first and foremost, the number one important thing is what's the problem I'm actually solving for this person. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine who's a patent attorney and a trademark attorney. We were talking the other day, and he's kind of talking to the newer attorneys that are working with him, and he's trying to get them to understand. He asked them the same question. He said, "Hey, what value are we providing for these people?" And they said, "Well, we're helping them get these actions filed so that they can file a patent, so that they can do da 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 da." And he's like, "No. People don't care about a patent. People do not, business owners do not care about the piece of paper. They care about being protected. They care about having an advocate. They care about having someone that's fighting for them." When you're talking strategy, you do not have a strategy unless you can clearly say, here's who I'm trying to sell to, and here's why they should even give a crap that I exist. And I think people really freak out over that, and they say oh, if you don't have to be a Nike or an Apple to matter to people. I think people kind of assume that oh, I have to be this big multinational billion-dollar corporation or no one's going to care. But it's if you have a really cool service and you're providing something really valuable to 10 people, they're going to be bummed if you're not around, and when you figure that out, that is the core of strategy. In the marketing world, they always say, you need to know your customer avatar and you need to have a demographic worksheet filled out. There's kind of these technical things. And I think people let the technicality or the tactics overtake what the real goal is, And so for me, it's kind of funny. One of the first things that we do with clients, a lot of times when I work with different companies is, they'll come in and they'll say something like, our target customer is a business owner between the ages of 28 and 65. They really like, this magazine, they drive this kind of car, and their needs are, and they are this type of personality type, and they kind of think that that's customer research. And what we do, this is actually funny. We did this for somebody about 6 or 8 months ago. Is we came in and we said, okay, cool. That's who you think the client is. I said, hey, give me 5 people to talk to. They're happy with you or not happy with you, just 5 people you work with. And I went back and I literally just talked to them. I was like, hey, why do you like working with this group? What do you not like? What would be different? What would be, and the information that we got back from there has literally drove all of the messaging and the content and everything that we made for that person. When we presented it back, they looked at us, they're like, man, you guys are geniuses. How did you come up with this? And I'm like, we didn't come up with it. Your customer told us, this is word for word what they said, And so I think that's where a lot of people go wrong is they get stuck in the mechanics of it of like, how do I make an avatar and how do I lay it out? What should it look like? And they forget, hey, just call up 5 or 6 people that like your product and just ask them, hey, what brought you here? Why did you do this? And then the other thing I would add that's really important is I think people, this is something I do a lot even still, is I think that if you get specific, that you're going to destroy your business, right? And so I see a lot of fear where people say, oh, but if I only service that one person, what about, if I only service the 9, what about the 9? The flip side is actually true. Like the companies that I've seen, like I have a friend that does, he runs a call floor for pest control companies. And when you talk to him, he's like, you're like, hey, what does your company do? And he goes, we manage after hours phone calls for pest control companies between this and this range size of company. And I was like, oh, I have a friend that does solar. I should connect you with him. And he goes, oh, no, we don't do solar. And I was like, that's so interesting. Like when somebody's that laser specific, like, that if you're a pest control company, like, who these guys are, and so it's I think those are kind of the two things is like forgetting to talk to people and then feeling afraid to, really narrow your focus and focus on helping those people.
Well, and I think it also comes back to the validation episode that we did with Eric and like letting the customer tell you if your idea is good. Nothing's worse than dropping $200,000 on an idea that you're not even sure if it's good. And that whole thing you talked about, Shane, just like going and talking to a customer like, oh, that's so brilliant. You're so brilliant. Like, no, I just talked to a customer that uses it and I want to know what they think. Right.
Yeah.
And so that validation, the thing that's kind of interesting for a lot of our listeners, and we've talked about this in several different episodes, but the entrepreneur may not be good at marketing, right? Like they might be good at pest control, or they may be good at whatever their industry is. They may know it really well, but a lot of people see marketing as maybe this big black box. There's so much, and you talked about like people
tech feels like
yeah, right. But like as an entrepreneur who's listening to this, let's talk about executables, right? And like executing a marketing plan, and let's just kind of dissect that to kind of a step by step, like so it's not so overwhelming. Be like, cool, I got a marketing plan. What's a marketing plan? Yeah. What does it mean to execute, right? And I don't mean killing anything, unless it's in terms of like, dude, you killed that. But at the same time, like let's talk a little bit about that of what it means to like take action and how do we get to that step?
Yeah. Well, let's back up a little bit too, because this reminded me of something. Your question reminded me of something, Austin, you and I have talked about, where almost before we even say like, what are the executables? I think it's almost good to set a foundation of like, what should a founder's role be in marketing, right? Austin, you and I had a conversation and when we were talking about how specific do you want a founder to be when they come in and talk to you about their app, you kind of think like, oh, if I want to go in and give a lot of direction, like I need to go to you, Austin, and be like, hey, I want to build in this language. I want to use this platform. I want this service. I want, and I started giving you all the mechanical details. And you said back, when we were talking about that, you're like, man, I would way rather have a founder that comes in and says, hey, I'm not really concerned with so much of how we deliver this, but here's the people I've talked to, and here's the most pressing thing we're solving, and here's what it has to do. Like almost like setting the tone rather than trying to set the line items, right? And I think it's the same in marketing. I think as far as a founder's role, did you guys see the founder movie about McDonald's? Did you see the part where he's he's kind of like struggling to scale his company, and that guy comes in, like kind of the younger business guy, and he goes, you think you're in the hamburger business, you're actually in the real estate business, and it would kind of shift, is like a paradigm shift for him. That's like a founder's role, I think, in any company, is like, you're not in the pest control business, like you're in the customer service business, right? Like you're in the making your customers super happy with what you do. And I think that's how you really scale. I think you see a lot of people that, let's say you're like a pool technician, and you're the best pool technician in the world. It's like, we all know people that are ridiculously good at what they do, and they're just never going to break that orbit of their 30 pools that they service, And so I think as a founder, with marketing, like before you even talk executables, you almost have to remove yourself from, hey, I know the service really well, but now or whatever it is. But I think the most important thing to concern yourself with is like, how does my customer feel about that service, and how can I really level that up, And so to me, that's a lot more important as far as like where a founder should step in. I'd rather talk to somebody like that's done a lot of research on that side and knows their customer really well, than somebody that comes in and says, we have to use a plan. We have to use this for our website. We have to do this for analytics. It's like, I feel like you kind of need to let somebody on that side do their thing, and you as a founder do your thing, which is knowing the customer, And I think this kind of brings up a point too that's about challenging assumptions, right? Because I think the one layer that I would add on to what you said, Austin, I think the tone of that's genius. Like, hey, don't be so concerned about the platform. But I also see a lot of people that will have one conversation with one developer, and that developer might say, oh, I code in this language, And then they go out and they say, hey, here's what we're going to do. And so I would almost say, use what the developers are familiar with, but have conversations with 4 or 5 different people, because there's been a handful of times. I was actually asking you about a language the other day, and you were like, man, do people even use that anymore? Like, that's so out of date, And so it's kind of funny where I think a lot of people, I see this in marketing all the time, where people will say, hey, here's my customer, here's the pain point we're solving, da 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 da. And as soon as you start drilling that, you start drilling in on, hey, where did you figure that out? You realize it was from like one kind of partial conversation 3 years ago. And so I think you have to always be challenging your assumptions, right? I think as a founder, I think as a marketer, I think as a developer, like, I think it's like get some data, and then, I don't like working with clients. I'm sure you guys have this too, like where they go on the opinion shopping spree, right? Where it's like they talk to 50 developers, and of course they're going to have 50 different answers. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting, right? Like challenging your assumptions and thinking through, like, trying to put the dots together, If you don't have your marketing figured out, you shouldn't do anything else first, right? And not figured out meaning like you don't have to have everything in place. You don't have to have an Instagram. You don't have to have all this stuff. But it's kind of like there's 2 general paths I think there's maybe 3 general paths that I've seen is like that founders take. One is you get the founder that is super headstrong. I know you've seen, we've talked about this. I know you've had these kind of app founders where they say, hey, I'm telling you, I had a dream. This is $1 billion idea. It has to be called this. It has to have these features. Awesome. I'm telling you, just believe in me, dude, and I'm going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. Statistically speaking, you're probably not Mark Zuckerberg. Like, it feels like that way, especially in apps for some reason. It feels like people look at an app and they're just like, they have to have the moonshot, So that's kind of the first person. The second person is like, I don't want to talk much about them because it's like, I do see a lot of people where they're like doing a company or doing an app and they just don't even have any clue. They're pretty clueless altogether, right? So they're just kind of bumbling along and talking to whoever and whatever. And we've all seen that kind of thing. But then the third that's the most fun to work with is people that are very strategic about how they approach it. And to them, I'll use the example of like a trademark. Like we were doing a trademark recently, and this conversation came up with the same IP attorney I mentioned before. And he was like, it's interesting. A lot of people will come in and they'll say, the company has to be called this because it's my grandma's middle name, And no matter what, they will not change the name of their company, even if it's impossible to get the trademark, And so he said, he's like, I'm always trying to consult people and say, hey, you should be more concerned with trying to achieve a certain result rather than your headstrong opinion of it has to be called this. So anyway, that's kind of a roundabout way to get to the point I'm trying to make is I think with marketing, the right time to start marketing is when you very first start thinking about the company, And maybe at that point, maybe marketing is going to look like, hey, let me open up a free MailChimp account. Let me get 50 people on it, my friends and family, and let me have 3 conversations a week with somebody that's a potential customer. Marketing is, let's say you have like a sporting goods product, maybe marketing is like going down and standing at Shields for 3 hours on a Saturday and watching, let's say you're selling a fishing pole. It's like, go stand in the fishing department, and watch 50 people come up and see what they're looking at and see what's important to them and see, you might think, oh, carbon fiber, this is the most important. And they might come up and they're like, oh, this one's red, this one's blue. I think the most important time to start marketing is before you think through the product. And how many of you guys seen that? Like where as you start building the app and as it starts growing, it turns into something different than when you first started out, right?
It's so much cheaper to change a prototype because basically it's just images. It's literally a drag and drop and swap. Whereas trying to make those alterations and those changes through development is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Right. That is 30 to 60, 80 hours, depending on what it is. And so like for our listeners who are listening or watching this, the time to start marketing and validating is now.
Yeah.
Really. It can't be too soon. Like literally, if I have an idea, I'm going to go to Shane or Austin and be like, hey guys, I got an idea to do this. What do you think?
Yeah.
Right. That right there already is starting that process. And then take it to the next level. Like you said, Shane, take the MailChimp and start emailing people and just start kind of getting feedback from those around you.
Yeah.
I feel like it's so important.
Yeah. The time to start thinking about marketing is not the day you go live in the App Store, Yeah. I'll use the example when after we did our Kickstarter campaign and we had a lot of success with it. It was at the time it was like one of the most funded campaigns. It was on Kickstarter. Now there's a lot more, but we would have people that would hit me up all the time and they would say, "Hey, I just published our campaign. It's been live for 2 days. Can you help us market it?" And I was like, "Man, you are 6 months behind the ball," because especially on a campaign, like you make your money, all of your money on a campaign like that. And I think this is similar with any product or launch. Like your money is made in all the work you're doing for 6 months leading up to it. And so that's, a Kickstarter campaign is a good example for say like an app launch or something. But when you're launching on Apple, that's not the time to start thinking about, hey, how do we get customers? You want to have already been communicating with your email list of 500 or 3,000 people for months. And then you let them know, hey, it's live. And they all go, I'm kind of surprised how many people think in marketing, like they have the, if you build it, they will come approach. And like, I commonly talk to people that have, probably gone to somebody, a group like you guys and spent their life savings building an app, probably an awesome app. But then they come to us and they say, hey, we've done the really hard part. I put up my, I got a home equity line to build this product. Now I've done the really hard part. Now I just need you to go market it. I go, all right, well, what's your budget? And they go, well, we spent all our money building the product. And I go, man, you're in trouble. In fact, I think I read somewhere, I need to validate the data on this, but now we're kind of not in a movie world anymore, but I'm pretty sure that the number, there's kind of an algorithm they use in Hollywood, and I'm pretty sure it's 1-to-1. So if Hollywood creates a $300 million budget movie, they'll spend $300 million marketing that movie. I'm pretty sure it's a 1-to-1 kind of thing. And so I've always kind of used that reference of saying, hey, if you're going to invest $100,000 in your course or $500,000 in your app, whatever you're investing there, you should probably be investing something similar in bringing customers to it,
Yeah. Well, and now that we're kind of talking about numbers, let's kind of transition to KPIs. So key performance indicators. And for those that are listening that don't know, let's talk about KPIs and how important they are when it comes to building a marketing plan. And what are those KPIs? What do you gauge off, specifically tech?
So specifically tech, I think any business at all, but especially tech, the most important KPI is how much does it cost to get one customer, right?
So your customer acquisition or CAC, right?
Yeah.
Customer acquisition cost.
Yeah. We've had a lot of conversations, where somebody will come in and say, hey, how long do I need to market before I can not market anymore? And I think people are always kind of looking for this tipping point where it's like, hey, you spend enough that you cannot spend anything else. And it's like, imagine if Coca-Cola was like, oh no, everybody knows who we are. Like, we're going to not market anymore. They'd be irrelevant in they'd be Shasta in 5 years. So I think that is the most important thing is saying, hey, how much does it cost you to get one customer? And I think when you're a young company or a founder, maybe a solo founder doing it, is you even need to understand, hey, if you're the founder and you're cold calling people to get on your app, what's the cost of that? How much in your time, does it take you 10 hours to get one customer? Okay, then maybe you could equate, an acquisition cost of $1,000 because when you hire a really good sales rep, maybe they'd be $1,000, or something like that. But that is the number one KPI. And then the second one that would go along with that is LTV, right? So lifetime value. So if you say, hey, I can acquire a customer for $100 and over the course of their lifetime with me, they're going to spend $50. That's not very good, right? But if it's like, hey, I can acquire a customer for $100 and over the course of their lifetime, they're going to spend $30,000 and they're probably going to have 3 or 4 referrals, like you're going to kill it, It is tough because it's so different across, and there's so many different software platforms. Like this is something we run into a lot too, where sometimes to track every single piece could get really hard when you're like, let's say you're driving leads over here and then they're going into this system over here and then the checkout happens over here. And so sometimes we have clients where their patience runs out and they just kind of say, like specifically we've had people work with in the local, lead gen space where they just say, how much did we spend last month? And I tell them, they go, okay, cool. We got X amount of new clients. Like, let's keep going, But really, like how you do that, I'd say at the most basic level, there's a lot of free tools. Like Google Analytics is ridiculously powerful and it's totally free and they have a free certification course. And I think just keeping getting in there and starting to understand your numbers of like how many people are coming. I think demographic is really important so you can start to understand who your customer is. But I think the thing that drives all of it is let's use the example of an iPhone app, right? I think the most important thing you would want to know is how much is it costing me to get one person to come to the iTunes download store? What's the percentage of people that actually download the app? And what's the percentage of people that skip past the trial? And again, that can be so different based on the kind of business. But for an app, it's like that's pretty key. You know, I mean, if somebody came to us and they had those stats listed out and they said, "Hey, we only did 100 sales last month, but we only had, we had 1,000 visitors to our app store, and that means you're getting 10% of your visitors are turning into," like, I would look at that and be like, oh, okay, you are like sitting on a gold mine. That's a totally different thing. If they said, "Hey, we did really great. We got 100 sales last month," and they had 50,000 people go to the app store, it's like you might not be as relevant as you think you are. I think the most powerful tool for that though is Google Sheets. We have a couple campaigns we're even spending a lot of money, and I've never found anything that's just more simple to use, more streamlined, and you can manipulate the data and pull in. I can go in here and I can pull my 10 line items and say. So to get really specific, it's like when you're driving traffic, you want to know what's your CPM. That's how much, that CPM is how much does it cost to get in front of 1,000 people, right? And then after your CPM, your click-through rate. And so if it costs $10 to get in front of 1,000 people and you have a click-through rate of 3%, then that's going to drive how much it costs per click, And then you kind of just follow that all the way down. And then once you know how much it costs per click, then you understand, well, how much does it cost for them to convert on my page? And then how many of them take the upsell, and how much does that, so it all kind of factors in. And the best tool, legit, Google Sheets. Like, crack it open, put your 15 line items, and just figure out the numbers. And then Google Analytics as well is so powerful.
Yeah, the cool thing about those two tools are they're both free. They don't cost anything. So this is kind of a cool question I want to transition to, because I actually kind of excited about asking it, because I want to talk about the relationship between a developer and the development and marketing. What is your relationship with marketing, and kind of what are your mindsets when it comes to those two relationships? Yeah,
and I think that's really like, use the example of a store, right? Like, let's say that the tech that the developer is responsible for is the inside of the store. And as the marketer, I'm the guy in the corner, like, flipping the sign. I wish it was more elegant than that. But I'm like, I'm the guy in the store, like, saying, "Mattress sell, go into the store." But if I can drive people into the store, and then your store has crappy lighting, there's nobody to talk to them, they really drop the ball. I mean, they definitely go hand in hand, right? So I think the relationship between both of them is it's kind of a general answer. I think the relationship is you have to be on the same page and you have to understand. I think if the more that a developer understands what I'm trying to do on the marketing side, and the more that I understand the direction and the roadmap of the company, the more successful the whole thing's going to be, right? So that's kind of a general answer. And then let's talk about how that would actually get, like, really tangibly, or, a really tangible example of that is, let's say you're doing an iPhone app and you're marketing, you're going to be using Facebook primarily to target, let's say you're targeting people that love a certain fitness, like a keto way of, lifestyle or some kind of fitness routine, and you're driving them to, like, a workout app. The earlier that we can sit down with the developer and the designer and kind of the whole architecture of the app, the earlier we can start saying, "Hey, it's really important to us that we can fire a pixel back to Facebook when somebody successfully fills out their account. Hey, it's really important to us that they don't just download the app and it goes right to a screen that says, 'Hey, sign in or click here to do a plan.' It's really important to us that maybe they have 5 or 6 different screens that they can kind of slide through that explain to them what's in the app." And so I think that's kind of the other relationship too, is like where it gets really tactical, is saying, "Hey, how is somebody going to hear about this app? What's their user journey? And at what point, do I, as the marketer, hand the baton to Austin, the developer? And at what point does he hand the baton to Beaudry, the salesperson?" Like, you kind of need to know that, and if you don't, that's when you get into a kind of situation where it's the whole, "Hey, we finished our app, help us go market it." And I go, "Man, you need to rethink your entire onboarding process, or this isn't going to work on Facebook." I can even tell you a horror story about that. I worked for a company where, if we think about a graph, we were marketing towards, this is what our product is, but our development was, this is what our product should be, and this is what our product is. And there was a mismatch, right? Yeah. There was this gap right here. And as a sales team and as a marketing team, we were promising product A. What they were getting was product C. And there was a miscommunication between
the marketing and the sales and the developers, because the developers were developing features and tools that weren't what we were trying to market and what we were trying to aim at, right?
Yeah.
And so this kind of went along to a point where a company that raised $160 million laid off 90% of the sales and marketing team, right? I mean, this is a company that should have made it, right? They had revenue, they were doing AR, it was amazing, but there was a miscommunication between development and marketing, which caused they were marketing towards a product of what it should be, and they were actually developing of a product of what it is.
Yeah.
And there was a huge miscommunication, which caused the downfall, or at least a huge hiccup, step back in that company of millions of dollars.
The people that you read books about that are the best leaders in the world, like I actually, I think it's Herb Kelleher, the founder of Southwest. They would talk about how he would, and David Needleman, who founded JetBlue, like they said, David Needleman would fly coach. I guess JetBlue only has coach, but he would fly economy tickets all the time. And, this guy's worth however, he had more than enough money. He probably has a fleet of airplanes he can fly private. He's like, why would I fly private? Like, I want to know what my customer's experiencing, And it's funny because, like, let's use the example of a restaurant. Like, if I told you, hey, there's a restaurant and there's a big problem, that there's a guy standing out on the corner saying, hey, we have these really good hamburgers and they're 2 for $1. And then somebody walks into the restaurant and they go, man, I never even know what's on his sign out there. We're not even doing hamburgers. We do chicken. Like you'd be like, yeah, that's going to fail so fast. But it's like, I can't even tell you how many times I've had those conversations. And when I've done a little secret shopping and you go in there and the salesperson on the phone is, like venting to you as the customer about how stupid their marketing department is, and they're not on the same page. And it's like, man, as a customer, that's not making you feel very confident. So I think the other thing that I've really noticed, this has been over the last, I'd say 3 years or so. Because when we first started getting into marketing, I'd idolize these guys. I think like the typical marketing guy you think of is like, Madison Avenue, Mad Men show, like ultra creative. I would hear stories of like, like I had a friend that would work on these Chevy campaigns, and they would talk about how they would be, skydiving in Bali, and they would come up with this brilliant tagline, or like you hear a lot of these guys get passed around of like, oh, this guy's such a genius. He's the guy that invented the Got Milk campaign, and you think that it's all creative. I think good marketing is actually very much, it's not as creative as people think, It is and it isn't. It's more creative, like problem solving. It's not like waiting for a big flash of insight to come up with like a brilliant campaign idea. I think that's probably the biggest misconception. A lot of times, like when we write copy for say a sales letter or landing page, that it just gets a ton, people going, man, that is lights out. It's almost never the one when I sat down from, midnight to 3 a.m. and had this, was feeling like I was in the state of flow and just, cranked out this copy. It's almost always the ones that follow a little bit more of a formula, where it's like, hey, this section I validated with these 5 people, and these headlines, we wrote out 20 of them. This one had the highest click-through rate. And, this one had the most, favorable feedback from the people we talked to. So we're going to do both. It's more like that. And so it's almost more like project management and making sure things get done than it is, I can only think of a few times in the last 10 years where it's been like, man, I'm so stumped and I have this brilliant flash of insight and it produced anything valuable. It's almost, I think it's a lot more of like, Seth Godin talks about, like, it's not about being brilliant. It's about like putting the work in every single day and just kind of making incremental progress and incremental improvement, It's a pretty big misconception, I would say, for sure. I think it's kind of like with that, like, I don't know, it's like with apps, like I think that people think that, app founders are all nerds, that like, wear hoodies and stuff like that. And it's like, man, there's a lot more that goes into it than just writing good code. You know what I mean? Yeah, 100%. It's knowing your issues. Let's talk about, actually, I'm going to put you on a spot. I have an app. It's a really good idea. How would you market it? Really good idea. Really?
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I validated it.
I'm going to take Austin.
I've gone through.
According to
what's that?
I'm going to take Austin's line. According to who? Really good idea. According to who?
I validated it. I went through venture validators. I got an 8.5 on this app. It's an awesome idea. We feel like there's a really, really great product market fit. What is your thought process as a marketer? So
I don't know the category you're in. I'm assuming you wouldn't tell me unless you put me under NDA, and you're really protective of your idea and all that kind of stuff. So what I would say is the most neglected thing is creating content around what you do, right? And I think a lot of people think, oh, in order to market it, I have to do all this different stuff. And it's like, man, just get a camera and start talking about, hey, here's the 10 things that this thing solves, And if it's a fitness app, start talking about, here's 10 different ideas that can help you get your fitness under control in a pandemic, or whatever. And number 10 can be your app. It's like, that's everything. Start putting a whole bunch of content around it, and just
good content.
Yeah. And think through what are people asking? What are the common questions that are coming up? Once you have that, it's like, all right, let's start getting more people to see the content. And then at that point, it's okay, now let's understand the numbers behind the content and conversion, and then let's try to make those better. And that's typically what's, optimization, right? But first thing first is sit down, do some research, pull up 20 other apps and see what are 20 questions that pop up around your app, and just start putting content out for every single one. Tutorials too, I'm surprised how many of these smaller apps that we use on the marketing side. And, to me, really good marketing is when they have a really good tutorial library built out of here's how to make a coupon, here's how to do that. And that's often very neglected.
Well, I feel like HubSpot does really good. I mean, they have tons of tutorials of like how to make a landing page or Webflow. Like a lot of these other ones, they have really good tutorials that make it easier. And I'd say that's almost like an onboarding process as well. But that's good content that people who would use your app are going to be watching. Yeah. I think that's such a great idea. But it's not always the easiest, right? Is getting good content. And and it's kind of a side thing, but like, how do we know it's good content? I think the only way is we get content out, and then if it does good, then we call it good content. But I feel like, what do you think most important is just getting content out, right?
Marketing is a giant feedback loop, right? You put something out, you get feedback, you adjust it. And so to your point, Austin, the faster you can get that out there, the faster you're going to get feedback. And I think a lot of times, we take a very strategic approach to marketing, but I think sometimes there's a fine line, right, between planning and executing, and you have to, I think, kind of have a window of where you say, hey, we're going to plan up until this date, and then it's going to go live, So I think, to your point, Austin, like just having something out there, that's like table stakes. Like that's just showing up in marketing is the first half of the battle. The second half of the battle, though, Boder, you brought up, how do you know what's good content? And there's actually a really cool formula for this. So there's this book. It's out of print. It was written in like the 1960s. It's an old advertising book. It's called Breakthrough Advertising. And I always was kind of content always really made me mad for a long time, and like you hear a lot of people talking about like, oh, the Instagram algorithm, or, Mark Zuckerberg's so evil, and they make a lot of excuses of why their content doesn't work. And this book was the first time that I was able to actually figure out why something works and why something doesn't work. And it's a cool book. It's Gene Schwartz, Breakthrough Advertising. I found mine on eBay. It was like $400 for this little paperback book.
You say $400?
$400.
Isn't there a PDF of it somewhere?
There actually is a guy that owns the rights to it now. I'll find his name and we can link it in here. But he owns the rights to it from the family, and he's selling them now for like $100, I think, for a reprint.
Oh my gosh!
In marketing, they say it's like the best book that's ever. Like every single marketer is like their favorite book is this book. So Breakthrough Advertising, and the thing that's so groundbreaking is he has this formula where he says you have to talk people at the stage of awareness they're in. And at the lowest level, they're unaware. So they're not even aware that they have a problem. So you could have this really cool solution of like, hey, we're a full stack app firm, blah, 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 and the person down here doesn't even know that they need an app, And then the next stage up is they're problem aware. And so once they're aware of the problem, they might be, like, oh man, all of our competitors are on the Apple Store. We're really missing out because there's this whole set of leads that are going through that we're not even in the running for, So unaware, problem aware, and then they have then they're solution aware. And so solution aware is way before you as a company. It's like, hey, is this I really need to build an app. I need to be on the App Store. Oh, there's actually agencies that will help you do this A to Z to help you build an app, right? And then once you're solution aware, then there's product aware. And so that's when a company, like Strides can come in and say, hey, we actually have this, accelerator program where we can help you figure out all these different things that cost this amount. And then at the very highest end is most aware. And at that point, they're looking for either a deal, they're looking for urgency, they're looking for, they're trying to overcome an objection. And so the whole point of this awareness ladder, he kind of calls it, is that a lot of companies go out and they say, hey, we have app development starting at this rate, we can start your project in April. And you're never going to get somebody that's down here that's unaware. And so you're only going after, if that's the only kind of marketing you're doing, you're going after the really small pool of people that are highly educated, shopping around. They're going to go to 20 different agencies before they consider your bid. They're going to get, go through your bid line item by line item. In the marketing world, they call it like top of funnel or long key tail, where you're getting stuff where you're attracting these people that are either completely unaware or maybe they're aware of the problem, but not much more. That's where you're really going to win. So I would almost kind of look at that and I would think like, instead of just, once you're putting out content, that's entry point. Like you're not even in the game if you're not putting something out. And then once you're putting something out, it's like, all right, how can we hit each of those 5 steps? Up here, maybe they have a bunch of Q&A and they say, maybe it would be, aren't I way better off just to hire a developer on my own? I'll save way more money. And that's where you come out with content and say, hey, here's actually why that's not the case. If it's, so you just kind of go down the list and you say, hey, what are 3 or 5 questions that I would need to know in each stage? There's your first 15 pieces of content or, 25 pieces of content right there. Marketing should be pouring gas on a fire that's already burning, right? That doesn't mean, you already have to have your app launched and you have to have 50 people, at $1,000 a month or whatever, but you have to have something already kind of figured out. And it's so much easier to scale something that's already working than it is to try to make something work in the beginning. The thing that I would say, and Austin, I've heard you say the same thing too. It's like, if you're going to come to me and you don't have anything even working and no research, and not that, none of us are in the business of stealing anyone else's idea, but why would anybody invest the time to do that and not just do it for yourself? You know what I mean? So I think you have to understand when you're working with a marketer, when you're working with a team, you need to understand that their role is not to build your company. Their role is to help you execute your killer vision and serve your customer, And so I wish that more people do that. I wish that more people would come in and say, hey, here's the traction I've got. Here's the customers that are coming in. I've already got, people buying this regularly. We just need to scale it up. And I think the most, I'm a people pleaser. I think that's kind of inherent with marketers too. And I hate when somebody comes in and it's like, hey, if we can't figure out our customer acquisition, we're going to be bankrupt in 3 months and I'm going to lose my house. And, my kids are going to pull my kids out of school. It's like, I hate that.
Here's the weight of the world on you, Shane. Here you go. Just put that on me.
Yeah.
Like what?
Like there's nothing that will make a marketer shut down faster than that and going, oh man. So
oh my God.
My least favorite client is the opinion shopping spree. Hey, either this starts working in 45 days or I'm going to, I have 3 other agencies I'm going to go talk to or 3 other people or, my niece can do this part of it. And it's like, man, you are never, imagine you're building a huge house and you bring in a contractor and you go, hey, if I'm not happy within a month, I'm going to bring someone else in to build this. You're like, okay. You have to kind of know, you have to kind of commit for a while. And it's like this, nothing's overnight, So I think you have to make sure your people are, moving, but I think you have to be committed and say, we're willing to invest in this for more than, 30 days. Dan Kennedy, who is like legendary direct response copywriter, he's like, you should never spend a single cent on marketing until you can write a journal entry in the day of the life of your ideal customer. Right. And what he's saying there is like, you need to know it inside and out. You need to know how they talk. You need to know what they say. You need to know what turns them off. You need to know, who they voted for, what their personality type, like get to know them, get to know your customer. And then you can actually scale it. I think, a lot of times people think like, oh, I'm trying to get 100,000 buyers for my product. I don't have time to talk to one. And it's like, you're never going to get 100,000 if you don't know one, and that's what makes marketing really fun. When you start going like, oh man, okay, maybe we're not everywhere we want to be, but we have 3 or 4 people this week that said this, like we're on the right track. Like marketing and starting a business is a giant mystery novel, so it's kind of fun to like figure it out and start putting those clues together as you go. So yeah, my company is called Standard Behavior. And if you just go to standardbehavior.com, we can talk about projects or you can see some of the stuff that we've done and we can connect there.
Awesome. Thanks, Shane.